Well, hi there, everybody. Welcome back to the channel here on Port Royal Pop, and welcome to Credits Roll. This is the movie and TV review show where we take one of the latest releases and talk about it live here on the channel. Some discussion points, what we liked about it, what we didn't like about it, some of our thoughts, theories, and criticism of the property as we talk to it live. All right, I'm your host Patrick, and welcome to our open spoiler discussion around Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, the latest entry into the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It's been out for a couple of weeks now. I've been wanting to do this open spoiler discussion for about a week, and just haven't got around to it. And that, honestly, maybe that is a sign of what my thoughts of the movie are. It's not something. It's not. It's not a movie that I quite obviously wasn't rushing to cover here on the channel. It's a movie that, and everybody has seen the reviews by now. It's not a movie that is universally praised by the critics. I think it holds. It may be lower, but it held the tie for the lowest rated Rotten Tomato scores in MCU history. I think it may. Alright, it's sitting at 48%, which is the second lowest, with Eternals rated the lowest. So yeah, this movie opened up, and it's the latest entry, and it was meant to be the start of a new phase for Marvel, ending what they were calling the multiverse saga, ending phase 4 of the MCU, and ushering in a new phase that would ultimately lead into Avengers Secret Wars and Avengers Kang Dynasty. So I covered on the show on the channel on Screen Time a couple of weeks up, maybe it was last week's episode or maybe the week before, that Marvel's latest phase has been quite average, which is out of character for the MCU, because usually the MCU are pumping out banger after banger properties from phase 1 right up until Endgame. And I'd go as far as to say that right up until WandaVision really was their good run. I'm not going to say golden age, but it was a strong run for Marvel right up through WandaVision. We've had some good properties within phase 4, but this is the latest entry, and honestly, like, the fact that I didn't even want to rush and talk about Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania pretty much sums up my thoughts around the film itself. I thought it was quite average. I really enjoyed watching it. I enjoyed being in the cinema for this, as I do with every Marvel movie. But then afterwards, when I was walking out and I thought, I had fun. It was not by any means a bad, terrible, awful movie, but it was an average movie. I thought the humor was a bit hit and miss. I thought the visual effects, though they looked really good, I can see where a lot of people, a lot of critics, and a lot of people in general may have their issues with the visual effects and the whole thing in general. Okay, so let's just get this into a bit of formality for this credits roll open spoiler discussion. So first of all, we'll talk about some of the things we liked about the film, and then we'll talk about some of the things we didn't like about the film. Alright, some of the things I liked for Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania was, first and foremost, Jonathan Majors as Kang. This was the big introduction for Kang into the MCU, and absolutely did not miss a beat the introduction of Kang into the film and into the MCU, I thought was absolutely brilliant. And Jonathan Majors absolutely hit it out of the park. I think he played the role so well. Every time he was on screen, he commanded attention. Like, you wanted to keep watching. And look, even some of the footage we're seeing right now from the trailer, he's got that sort of like presence, screen presence as Kang. And to go off anything, if this is what if this is what we're expecting from Kang moving forward, obviously not this version of Kang, so as you know, he meets his demise. But if this is the type of Kang that we are going to be watching moving forward, I'm all for it. I really, really, really enjoyed his portrayal as Kang in this movie. I thought it was the absolute highlight of the film. Some of the other highlights that I like was actually Cassie. I didn't mind her in the movie. I thought the actor that played her, and the name is escaping me right now, but I thought Cassie, who comes off as a little bit annoying in the trailers, but the way she played out on screen, and Catherine Newton is the actress who takes on as Cassie, which is different to the previous iterations we've seen. But I thought the way that she portrayed Cassie in this movie wasn't annoying. It was actually quite really well done. And there's this thing around, when you get these new heroes in, when they're taking on mantles of already established characters. That's the one thing that I really thought, I wouldn't say it was rushed, but it just felt a bit forced in that you've got Cassie, who now has a suit of her own, an Ant-Man suit of her own that was made by Granddaddy there. I thought it was a little bit overzealous for us to think of her taking on the mantle of Ant-Man. And that was one of the things that I sort of had an issue with, in that, does every protege now have to be next in line, so to speak? We'll get to that in the next half of the video. But yeah, definitely, though, Cassie, for what it was worth, her character didn't annoy me, and I thought she was actually well done. I liked certain things that made me feel like this would, and it's been said many, many times, and said in my out of theater review, that this movie is the most Star Warsy I've felt watching an MCU movie so far. Guardians definitely had that feel, but this one just absolutely embodied what a Star Wars film should look and feel like, especially in the quantum realm. So that's something that I give as a plus, because I like a huge fan of Star Wars. So seeing that type of thing applied to other movies definitely gets a plus for me. The end credit scenes. We had 2 end credit scenes which set up things to come. So obviously the first one was around the Kangs after the ending, which, by the way, we'll get to the bad soon. But all the Kangs, I thought, was an interesting concept, and if we're going into Kang Dynasty, this definitely sets that up. But then the second post-credit scene, well, that was the mid-credit scene, but the post-credit scene focused on the season upcoming of Loki, season 3. I'm a fan of Loki. I liked season 2, of Loki. I like season 1. I know a lot of people didn't like it, but I like season 1. I thought the idea that they had between the TVA and the way they did things like that, I liked. We're talking about Ant-Man, so I liked the little preview, we're getting that of Loki, and we can see this is where we start to see that build towards Kang Dynasty, because it's that slow build and it plants the seed for things to come, much like what we've seen with the Infinity Saga, that there was this slow build towards Thanos, and certain characters were starting to interact with Thanos, or whether that be third hand or first hand, second hand, whatever that may be, they started to build that up towards each character going towards them. And that's something that I thought was really well paced in the Infinity Saga. So then you're having Loki and Owen Wilson's character, whose name also escapes me right now, but the agent, TVA agent that Owen Wilson plays, just starting to lay eyes. And I like that Owen just looks at Loki and says, "Really, this is the guy, this magician up on the stage? This is the big threat?" So obviously we're going to get more about Kang. So it alludes to in the end credit scene, the post-credit scene, but it alludes to the fact we're going to see a little bit more, maybe get a bit more of Kang in Loki season 2, which I don't mind. But yeah, that's honestly those 3 major points. Jonathan Majors as Kang, Cassie, the whole Star Wars feel. Actually, and I'll add a 4th one. So the 4th point is Paul Rudd. He demonstrated some range that we all know that he has. He has played, he's generally the Ant-Man movies has been comedies. And Paul Rudd is a highly acclaimed comedy actor that makes us laugh, and he embodies comedy so well. But he also has the side where if he needs to be serious, he can be serious. And that's something that that's something that we see in Quantumania. We see that sort of serious side to Scott Lang that we know that Paul Rudd has, and that was a highlight for me. Like, I really, really enjoyed the moments between Scott Lang and Kang when Cassie's in the prison cell and they have those interactions within there, and then that scene where Ant-Man, where Scott Lang goes up to Kang, this scene here on the screen right now, and says, if you ever touch her again, I'll kill you. Or something similar to that, which I thought, yeah, this is a father that's wanting to protect his daughter, and Paul Rudd absolutely made us, side with him and saying, it's, and it's not like we never doubted it, but Scott absolutely, as you can see, absolutely, Cassie means the world to him, and to have this guy come in and do harm to her or threaten harm to her, and for him to stand up in such a serious way, I like seeing moments like that. I like seeing those moments filtered in within the movies, within the Ant-Man movies. Alright guys, let's get into the second part of the video, which probably will run for a bit longer than the first part. Let's talk about some of the issues we have with the movie. First and foremost, it sort of didn't really mean anything in the long run in terms of Kang. This version of Kang, which is absolutely incredible, but he dies at the end from a bunch of ants. And we are wondering, is that it? This big bad villain that Kevin Feige and Marvel have been touting as the next big bad Thanos. There he is there, Kevin Feige. He dies. And he's dead. Like, it's confirmed through the post-credit scene that he is dead. There's a shot of He Who Remains at the end of Loki. Which, yeah, that's something I didn't talk about before as well, like the whole thing at the end of Loki season 1 with He Who Remains and all that. So they are definitely well aware of Kang, but they're now seeing all the different variants and all that, which is cool, and I can't wait to see more of that in Loki season 2. But yeah, one of the issues that I had with it is another issue that I had was the humor. I thought some of the jokes were a bit hit and miss. There's that whole thing, and by the way, MODOK, who I didn't have a problem with. A lot of people had a problem with the way he looks, but that is what MODOK looks like. I mean, what are you expecting? If they're going to do a live action adaptation of MODOK in the quantum realm of all places, then of course he's going to look like that, and that's what he looks like in the comics, and is pretty faithful adaptation of that. So I don't see an issue with that. I actually thought the character and all that lines up, because we saw at the end of the first film, and like the way that the first film ties into this one, is that he gets sort of taken to the quantum realm and he's disfigured and disformed. And we saw it happen in the end of the first movie, and we just thought nothing. Oh, he's dead. But he actually survived, and he's mangled and crippled into this other body. I thought was I didn't have a problem with that. I like that. The only thing I had a problem with is some of his jokes and some of the goofiness related to MODOK, and especially around I forget what's his name. Who MODOK is. The Yellow Jacket. Damien Cross. It is, Damien Cross was never as goofy as that. He was a bit odd. He was a bit quirky, but he wasn't as goofy as he is portrayed in Quantumania. I thought that was a bit jarring. That was the only problem I had with it. And the jokes about, don't be a dick and all that, that just fell absolutely flat for me. I didn't laugh or giggle at all at that sort of stuff. When Cassie, the big redeeming factor for MODOK, after everything, is Cassie telling him to don't be a dick. And then he's running up the ramp and coming to the rescue saying, I'm not a dick. That is just... But then the biggest, most cringe-worthy character in this whole movie is the Jelly Man thing, whatever he is. Who, when he first comes on screen and he says, how many holes do you have? And I'm like, what? What is this? I thought it was that was very cringe. That was the cringe character in the movie for me, which I absolutely did not like at all. He didn't make me laugh at any of the jokes involved with him. Oh, you have 7 holes and all that. I was like, ugh, whatever. So I hated him. I thought the side characters in that were interesting, like the freedom fighters and all that, but we didn't really get more out of it. Like, we understand that they're freedom fighters who are fighting against Kang, but that was it. Like, what else has happened to them? Like, why should we care about these freedom fighters? We know nothing about the freedom fighters so far. We just know that their home has been wrecked, and Kang, we don't even know what Kang did to them, really. He did stuff to them that they didn't like, and they're kicked out of their house, and it's just all a mess. I don't remember any of their names. There weren't any memorable, apart from the fact that they're memorable for being so cringe, like the Jelly Man. I don't even know the Jelly Man's name. He's Jelly Man. But they're memorable for being bad, which is not a good thing. For a movie called Ant-Man and the Wasp, there was hardly any wasp in the movie. You can argue that Mama Pym, Michelle Pfeiffer's Mama Pym, you could argue that she's, because she was the Wasp. There's more of her in this film than there is of Hope, which is like, for a movie called Ant-Man and the Wasp, there's not much of the Wasp in it. Janet was her name. Janet Van Dyke. There she is. But by the way, if I could add a positive, is the acting and some of the actors in their roles. Michael Douglas, just, he plays Hank Pym so well. Michelle Pfeiffer plays her character so well. Janet so well. And all the other characters, like, Scott Lang, and even, all the actors, I can't fault them, but it was just the overall story itself was a bit jarring. Like, the whole quantum realm is a mess. We're under the thing that they've set up that time is a factor when you go into the quantum realm. Like, hours and hours pass when you're down there, but time seemed to move at a pretty normal pace when they're in the quantum realm for the entire of this movie. So they did say something about, you're in layers and layers, but that's just them coming up with an excuse as to why time is the same to be in for them in the quantum realm. Some of the other things that I have issues with are, like, we don't really... The quantum realm, although it looks really good, it definitely is not a anything memorable about it. It reminds me of like Felucia or something like that from the Star Wars universe. And I thought, it was a bit... I don't know. The quantum realm it's a mess. Like, the whole thing about the time and when they're down there and they use time travel. To me, the quantum realm was about... It goes hand in hand with time. But time was not an issue in this movie. And watching this scene on screen right now, excuse me, one of the other things is that there was a whole plot that they sold to us in the trailer, in this scene in the trailer, that was not in this movie. And that was about Scott Lang wanting to turn back time to spend more time with Cassie. All the years that he was in the quantum realm, that he missed out spending time with Cassie, that's not in the movie. It was about, you guys are here, there is something I need from Janet. I'm locking Cassie up to use as bait. And then the movie was about saving Cassie and getting out of there. And stopping Kane from escaping the quantum realm. I thought that was a bit of a misdirect. I actually would have liked the idea if they played on that storyline thread more, and if they played on that as the main plot point for the movie, that Scott needs Kane and his power and his abilities to turn back time so he can spend more time with Cassie. I think that there makes for a far more interesting premise than what we got in Quantumania. The scenes where... Well, the scenes on screen right now when Cassie was being... does she have a name? I don't remember if she has a name, like Ant-Man, and then you got the Wasp. Does she have a name? Let me have a look. No, she doesn't have a name yet. What does she become in the comics, guys? Stature. Stinger. Okay. Actually, that's a point. We'll get to the end of this other point that I'm going to bring up. But yeah, that was an issue. Um, like the whole idea that they set up Kang to be the big bad, and then they go ahead and kill him. That to me represents the biggest mistake Marvel is doing with the MCU in the multiverse saga, because there are no repercussions, there are no outcomes. It's okay. We killed Kang, this big bad guy, the next Thanos of the MCU. But wait, there's more. There's heaps more because there's other universes. And that just brings up questions like, okay, well, if Scott was to die in this movie, or if Cassie was to die, or Hope, or Janet, or Hank, which I thought was actually going to bite the dust, to be honest. If any of them die in this film, then there's another version of them out there. And we've seen it in all the other Marvel movies, and it just has that overarching weight over the top of all the Marvel movies, is that if somebody dies in the MCU, they're just only going to come back again. So they've got that up their sleeve now to use, to bring Robert Downey Jr. back as Iron Man, to bring Captain America back as Chris Evans. Said that they were around, but that's okay. But that's the precedent they've set up. And this is just not Quantumania. This is Marvel in general. I'm just getting a bit off topic here. But that leads back into the fact that the death of Kang in this film didn't mean anything. It would have been a bit more interesting if he survived. And then he, following his sort of rise to become the all-powerful Kang, the the overruling Kang, the alpha male of the Kangs. But no, they just killed him, and they got all these other Kangs, or these three council, and one's like it's just a mess. But I enjoyed the movie. I liked the movie. I didn't watch it a second time. I was planning to watch it. I generally like to watch at least Marvel movies a few times in the cinema just to get my full comprehension of it. But this is a movie that I would say it's a bit of a chore to build up this strength to go and watch it again, because when I actually came out of the movie, I enjoyed it. I liked it. You may have seen my out of cinema reaction to Ant-Man. I thought it had some good things about it. I only thought, when I go to watch a movie, I only think about the good things out of the movie. It's not till afterwards, so maybe the drive home, or when I'm just preparing for shows like this, that I really just sit down and just ponder the movie. And the more I pondered this movie, the more problems I had with it. And then hearing the commentaries about the film, for both good and bad, also helps me identify things within the movie that I may have missed or not thought about, or reinforced what I was thinking. So I guess the general consensus of what I think about the movie is that it's a good movie. Well, it's like an average movie. Not the best, definitely not the worst, but a pretty average movie that left a lot more to the imagination, that could have been a great movie if it was executed, if it was firing at all cylinders well. I just think the whole thing about, and that's the one thing that also I haven't talked about yet, is that this is the third Ant-Man movie. If you were to watch all the Ant-Man movies back to back, just Ant-Man, one, then Ant-Man and the Wasp, and then now Quantumania, it would be a bit jarring, I think. I think you'll go from two. Well, the first one was absolutely grounded. The only big sort of fantasy sci-fi sort of thing in the first Ant-Man movie was the fact that Scott and Ant-Man can shrink. That's all you had. We do see a glimpse of the quantum realm then, subatomic. The second one, sort of expanded and went for a bit more with the whole thing of, I think her name's Ghost possibly, but her whole thing. But still, there wasn't these big fantasy type concepts or ideas in Ant-Man and the Wasp. The Ant-Man and the Wasp, the second movie, actually is the only movie that I haven't watched in the cinema, that I didn't watch in the cinema ever since I've started on the MCU run, which I started in the Avengers, by the way, in 2012, and was hooked ever since. Ant-Man and the Wasp was the only movie I missed out in the cinema for the movies that played in the theater. I lost my train of thought. What was I talking about? Oh, the Ant-Man movies as a trilogy. Um, it, and then you get to the third movie. So you get the first two, which is the first one's grounded. Shrinking is the big concept. The second one was about phasing in between realities or something like that. And then the third one, you're just absolutely thrown into the quantum realm. A quantum realm which we haven't seen. A quantum realm which we haven't been explained properly. The only real exposure we had to the quantum realm is when Scott Lang goes subatomic and he gets himself out of it, which the ending of Ant-Man 1, I thought was just such a cop-out. Let's be honest, I mean, this big moment where he sacrificed himself and then, oh, hang on, let's just hit reverse and get out of here. I thought that was a bit cheesy and a bit of a cop-out. But the third movie just completely changes the pace. And that's where I would come in and say, if I be devil's advocate, that the MCU has evolved beyond those grounded stories and now goes into grandeur storylines. And the thing is that it's carrying the tagline. I think movies that carry taglines sets a certain expectation for people when they go and watch it. So this movie is called Ant-Man The Wasp: Quantumania. So already it's got that Ant-Man lineage to it. You're already, okay, this is an Ant-Man movie. And I'm not saying that if you just call this movie Quantumania, if this movie was just called Marvel Studios Quantumania, still all the characters are Ant-Man characters and not the first and foremost. So it would still be, an Ant-Man movie. There are certain elements of an Ant-Man movie still living in this movie, such as the Scott Lang and Cassie dynamics. Not much of the Wasp, like I said, which is, a big disservice to even having Evangeline Lilly even there in the first place. Hank Pym was sort of in the background again. I was hoping, and he sort of had his little save the day sort of thing, but that's just quite annoying. Hope Van Dyke was sort of the lead support character because she's more involved in it than the other guys, aside from Cassie, which I would say is probably one of the main characters. But yeah, apart from that, I don't remember. And Bill Murray's cameo, we'll just call it a cameo because that's all it was. I thought that was funny. I thought it was cool. But the one thing that I'm noticing as well is Marvel movies nowadays always has that little scene in there where a big name actor shows up on screen and it's that wink moment, like it's Bill Murray. Wink wink. You know Bill Murray. He has this sort of appearance and then we as movie audience know, oh, that's Bill Murray, but people in the MCU will just look at him like, okay, there's another character. Who's this guy? People who don't know Bill Murray, like the younger people who don't know who Bill Murray is. So it's got that moment. I think Jeff Goldblum had that moment in Ragnarok. Although this was in sort of line with what they were going for, but Evan Peters had that wink wink moment in WandaVision when he showed up as Quicksilver. So if you don't know that he's Quicksilver in the X-Men franchise, then it'll just blow completely over the top of your head. But that was because that was like a sitcom sort of thing, so that's where it worked really well in WandaVision. But it's sort of just the little cameo that he appeared in this one just sort of blows over the top of the head. Um, yeah, the whole thing about the finale when they're fighting and they manage to kill Kang with a bunch of ants, just like okay. Um, I thought the ending itself was the weakest part of the movie. So that big fight scene, they kill him. We're thinking that Scott is going to be left there, but then Hope comes out and saves the day. So she gets her big moment, probably her only moment of the film. And they just open the portal back up and travel back up to the real world, which is sort of just like yeah. And then we get that moment where Scott's walking like, what have I done? Have I done anything? And he started to think about what Kang's talking about. That if you kill me, everything's going to fall apart, blah, blah, blah. And then he just brushed off like, nah, we'll worry about it when he gets there. And then it just ends. And then we get the two scenes after that. But I thought, yeah, definitely the ending, the finale of this film was definitely the weakest of the, the start, middle, finish. So, I mean, it has that going. What else can we talk about? Overall, like I said, when you're watching it, you just go along with it. Like it's an average movie. When you watch it, you just watch it. You just watch it with a straight face. Of some of the jokes, which fell flat. The visual effects are really good. To be honest, they are really good. This is a visual effects relied on film, so all the visual effects in this movie is nothing but top notch, and you wouldn't expect anything less from a Marvel movie, in that a lot of the effects are just flawless. So, but that's where a lot of people I know have issue with, in that it's just too CGI. But I'll give it a pass because it's Ant-Man the Wasp Quantumania, so there is going to be heavy visual effects. They're going to have to do that. You can't get out of it. But the way they pulled it off, sort of everything that you see on the screen is not in the real world. It's fake, right? So that's where you have to sort of suspend belief a bit, which is what I did when I watched the movie, and I found myself having not a problem with the quantum realm as much as other people who have seen it, who's just calling it a big CGI fest or whatever. But that's the good thing about it when you suspend your belief, is that certain things you can embrace more. But on the flip side of that is you shouldn't have to. You shouldn't have to suspend your belief to believe something is real. We went through Avengers, we went through all these different films, which I believe there's a sense of realism to it. They're grounded in the real world. But then you get something like Quantumania, which doesn't exist. We've never seen ever before. And it's just this fantasy, psychedelic sort of world you can see right here, which just looks like, and there's no real moments of interaction between the characters and the quantum realm itself, apart from the people in it and anything like that. Which compares to something like an Avatar. Like in Avatar and Avatar Way of the Water, the world of Pandora is a character in itself. The way that the characters interact with Pandora makes you believe that this can be a real place. And that's something that they didn't really do in Quantumania, unfortunately. Okay, I think we've covered most of the discussion points, so that's some of the things didn't really like, some things I liked. Where to from here with Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania? I think from here they need to ground the series a bit. The next movie we're getting in the MCU is. I was about to say Shazam. It's Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, which I have the utmost faith in James Gunn that he's going to deliver. And I've been saying that the way they built up Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania, I was saying, oh yeah, this is the movie that the MCU is going to get its mojo back. Although it didn't come anywhere near the mark, I still liked it. I still enjoyed it, but it was just too far removed from the mythos of Ant-Man and too far removed from the Avengers. Whereas Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, from what we see so far, it's still set in that Guardians world. Whereas this movie, Quantumania, was not set in the Ant-Man world. It was set in a different new world, which is why I have really high hopes for Guardians 3 to return to form, because at the moment, Marvel is in desperate need to return to form. So Guardians is the next one. And look, as much as we want it to succeed, even if it doesn't, we've survived so many Marvel movies now that have just been been average, that we can endure a bit more longer. We've been spoiled for the last 10 years. We've been absolutely spoiled for over 10 years with the MCU, with what it is, with how good it is, that it was bound to run out at some point. But it can return, and Guardians 3 or whatever movie in the future may bring it back, and it can return to being this franchise that we love, which we still love. Every franchise and every saga or whatever has their down point. TV shows have their down episodes, but it doesn't affect your overall. Well, it shouldn't affect your overall view of the MCU, because you still have the Infinity Saga. If you're like, I don't like much of what's happening in the Multiverse Saga, that's fine. You still have those great, great memories of the Infinity Saga and all the movies that's come before. So if look, let's put it this way: if you walk out of Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania and you now hate the MCU, then you were never a true fan of the MCU in the first place, and you aren't a fan of the MCU if you have claimed in the past. I bet you're all happy in that, watching Endgame and all that. And now that Marvel's had out a few average films, you all of a sudden turning on it. Don't lose faith in Marvel. Don't lose faith in Kevin Feige. And I think that'll bring it to our conclusion today. Although before we conclude, Peyton Reed, this is no fault to him. And that's the one thing I also wanted to touch on just before we go. This movie was written by, and if I can get them up, because the names escaped me now. Jeff Loveness was hired to write this. He is so far lined up to do Secret Wars. The biggest MCU movie after Endgame is Avengers Secret Wars. Makes me a bit nervous. But he's now had this under his belt. He's now seeing the reaction that he's getting from Quantumania. Secret Wars is going to have one thing for him that Quantumania doesn't have, and that's all the characters. Like, it's going to have the new Captain America, Sam Wilson. It's going to have it's going to have Shang-Chi. It's going to have Loki. It's going to have Doctor Strange. It's going to have all these characters in it. That's going to help it be a better movie. if it's going to be a bit more grounded back to what an Avengers movie is, as opposed to this fantastical thing that we've seen in Quantumania. So that's the only thing that sort of makes me worried for Secret Wars, that the writer of this movie is attached to it. But on the flip side to that is the characters that he's got to play with in Secret Wars, I think may help him out a bit putting together that film. All right, guys. So that was some of the. I guess we'll just go for a recap. So some of the, and I think I did the recap, but we'll just sign off now with the recap. Good things was I liked Cassie. I liked Scott Lang's acting. I liked Jonathan Majors as Kang. Plus plus plus. And the things is the quantum realm. Just the storyline, the way it plays out. Like Kang got sent to the quantum realm, and the ways to get out is through this thing that Janet has. But they sent to the quantum realm with him in the first place. So, like, if Janet didn't get to it, they would have sent him to the quantum realm, and he would have just walked back over to the ship and grabbed it, and then went straight back. But if Janet didn't go there and take what he had, then we wouldn't have the movie. And then Kang Dynasty would come a lot sooner. Which is another thing that annoyed me. I didn't cover that. They sent Kang down to the quantum realm with his ship, not knowing that there's going to be somebody there to scavenge the ship, not knowing that this person's going to go up to this passed out Kang and have a vision of the future, and then have the foresight to say, "Oh, you're going to escape with that. I'm going to go take that and hide it from you." That's quite annoying. But again, that goes back to the writing, which is not a strong point of this movie, and it's just unfortunately a common trope in Phase 4 is poor writing. And yeah, the whole third act and the conclusion of the movie didn't really gel well. But like I said, it's an average movie. Like, I enjoyed it when I was watching it. I had fun watching it. I was not bored watching it. There are just some jokes that the whole MODOK joke and I'm not a dick and the whole I have holes crap just really irritated me, and I just shook my head and just like, what are we watching? But apart from that, the rest of the jokes and the Ant-Man stuff, and the funniest one actually, when it goes back to MODOK, is when he said, when he's laying down and he says to Hank, "Oh, I'm an Avenger now." Got a chuckle out of that. The audience laughed at Scott's reaction, and that was all Scott in that moment. So that was one of the highlights of the film as well. All right, but that is going to do it for our Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania live credits roll discussion. So I'll throw it over to you guys. Please jump into the comments below and let me know what you thought of Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania. How many times have you seen it? Because I've seen it once, which is a rare thing for me in Marvel movies, only watching movies once. I walked out of the Eternal. My opinion of this movie might improve if I watch it a few more times, especially if I watch it before we put up the our official Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania review, which will go up at some point in the next couple of days when I get around to doing it. Whatever you think, jump in the comments section below. Let us know your thoughts, and let's get a discussion around Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania. That's going to do it for today's open spoiler discussion right here on Credits Roll on Port Royal Pop. Don't forget, if you like this video, please leave a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button and that notification bell to stay up to date for our next upload. We're going to end off with giving you our score for Ant-Man and the Wasp. So it out of 5 stars is 3 stars out of 5 stars, which equates to roughly 6 out of 10, which is a fair score, I think, for Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania. 3 out of 5. Alright guys, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.